Welcome to the ReWilded Human Podcast, where Dr. Lucille, holistic psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and Dr. Lynn, naturopath and nutritional consultant, help you reconnect with your true self through practical tips on mental health, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and spirituality. With a dash of humor, they tackle today's toughest issues to guide you back to a harmonious, vibrant life. Rediscover your natural self, just as nature intended. In today's episode,
employer would find out, you'd get fired, you'd go to jail. So you would lie. I didn't go to church. So, the whole culture was like really built around lying, and it was normal to keep you safe. So you kind of grow up in this environment and you think, okay, well, I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want someone to find out that I did something wrong and that's going to have consequences. So lying kind of becomes second nature to you.
The problem with it is, you lie. You know you lied, and everybody has an internal judgment. There is a record kept in your body, in your consciousness, that says you're a liar. So a lot of women will lie because they don't even realize that they can just say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable answering that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 61 of the ReWilded Human Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about lying, if lying is ever okay. And this was inspired by Dr. Lucille's live on Instagram earlier this week, right? Or was it this week? Yeah, it was this week, earlier this week. And I thought her live was amazing. And it got me thinking, and I said, we need to do a full episode of the podcast on lying. Following up the elections. So that brought up a lot of different things, right? And, what's happening in the world right now, so many lies going on, and then lying in relationships, within families and friendships, at work. So we're going to cover this because Dr. Lucille has some really interesting points. And I really want to find out, and I really want to know if lying is ever okay. Is there ever a reason to lie? We always say white lies. Oh, it was just a white lie. I don't want to hurt their feelings. It was just a white lie. But according to Dr. Lucille, all of these white lies do have consequences. They have energetic consequences.
Absolutely. They have psychological and even physical consequences. So I wanted to just set up the context for this, because the reason I did the live was because one of my followers had an experience in the run-up to the US elections where she heard a communication from a staunch liberal who was telling women who were also in the Kamala Harris camp, but married to Trump supporter spouses, to lie to their husbands, to go into the voting booth, do what you need to do to get Kamala in. And then when you come out, you just say, no, I voted for Trump. And my follower was, upset. She was very upset about this. She's very ethical. And she said to me, this is something that we have to discuss openly. This is really outrageous. I would never think of lying to my husband. That would really be destructive to our relationship. And, we respect each other's differences of opinion. He may not listen to my opinion, but at least we respect each other's differences.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we need to talk about more. And I agreed with her. I thought that's, a really important aspect of our lives, because, the irony, don't you think, when you're looking out on the world, Lynn, isn't it an irony that everybody wants change? Everybody wants it to be better in this world. We all want to be thriving and healthy and happy, but we don't look at our own level of responsibility for creating that. Absolutely. We cannot create something better on a bedrock. Well, it's not even a rock. It's like flimsy ground, really. We can't build a better world when we're all lying, right? No. Or when we're all accepting lies.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't work that way, right?
Absolutely.
I know you, Lynn, are very ethical and you're very forthright and you don't hold back on your opinion. You're not worried about telling the truth. And you do a lot of the hard truth things on Instagram, you know.
Yes.
So what has been your experience with lying? What do you feel about it? Let's see what you think first.
About lying. Well, back to the politicians. It's like, which lying politician should I vote for? I mean, they're
Right.
all lying. So it's like, here we are, we're having to make a choice between which liar do I want to vote for. That pretty much sums up politics for me anyway. This is a really hard one, and I thought a lot about it after seeing your video. I mean, I grew up in a communist country. I was born in a communist country in Hungary, where it's like everybody was kind of lying to everybody, and you had to lie to stay out of jail, because I mean, you couldn't, if you went to church, and your employer would find out, you'd get fired, you'd go to jail, so you would lie. I didn't go to church. So like the whole culture was like really built around lying, and it was normal to keep you safe. So you kind of grow up in this environment, and you think, okay, well, I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want to, someone to find out that I did something wrong, and that's going to have consequences. So lying kind of becomes second nature to you. Like in going through school, it's like, oh, I can't come to because my uncle's sick or whatever. Like I didn't even give those things a second thought, doing those kinds of things. Yeah, it's really tough, Lucille, because
It is, because in your example, if you think about it, just from the context of how the world is organized, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you grow up in a communist country and your survival depends on you lying, then that's really tough. You're put in a position where you have to violate probably your own ethical standards. You're putting yourself in a position where you may have to betray somebody, or you can't support somebody, because if you came out and supported them, you might get your neck on the chopping block, right?
Yeah.
That's
kind of like today.
yeah. So you are so hot. It's soul destroying, when and I don't judge anybody for, lying to the Nazis if they come to your door and you're sheltering Jews in your basement. You say, no, I haven't seen any of the Jews, that sort of thing. I wouldn't judge anybody. I don't actually judge anybody for lying, but I look at the whole culture of lying easily. The world, my feeling is the world will not change substantially if there is this amount of lying, which is essentially corruption, and it's essentially violating moral standards.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it always has consequences. People think, as you said earlier, it's a little white lie. We categorize them. This one is okay.
Yeah, this one's okay.
Not okay. But this one is okay. Why is it okay? And one of the reasons that it's not okay is, especially if you're not in a life-threatening situation, right? Especially if it's just living life in this world, where you have some freedoms and all of that. The problem with it is, you lie. Okay? You lied. And everybody has an internal judgment. Okay. And there is a record kept in your body, in your consciousness, that says you're a liar, right? You know that little tyrant that comes up and, always wants to turn everything sour in your life.
Yeah.
Some people think it's there to protect you, whatever you want to think about it, but it's always hammering you with these nagging thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a liar. How dare you talk about integrity and telling the truth, and how important it is teaching your children to tell the truth and blah, 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 when you are a liar, right? You're giving ammunition to that part of you, that inner tyrant that just wants to get evidence against you to stop you from doing anything with your life, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, most people have some inkling that they're being lied to. Even if they don't want to admit it, they have an inkling. You get a sense if somebody's giving you a stupid excuse for not agreeing to do something with you. Of
course,
And that erodes trust.
Yeah. And friendships and families, right?
Friendships and families and all. Yes, absolutely. So
But Lucille, we start very early because we teach
yeah.
our children to lie from a very young age.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of like the communist system. If they tell us the truth, then they get in trouble. Did you take that cookie? No, Mom, I didn't touch the cookie,
Sure,
and it's like, so it's almost like second nature for children. By the time they can speak, they learn to lie.
Exactly. So, but at the same time, it's ironical that parents try to teach their children to be honest, right? But then the children know, as you say, that they can be punished for being honest. Yeah, I took that cookie. Yeah, what's going to happen next, right? And I think that, we all we all have to take responsibility for our own morals and values. We have to call ourselves to account and ask, well, what is my level of integrity? I'm no longer a child, right?
Yeah.
What are my ethics? What are my values? What are my morals? As you know, it's very hard to keep up a lie, especially one where you have to keep propping up the lie with evidence.
With more lies,
With more lies, right?
Yes.
Well, I was, last week. I was late coming home from work. Why was I? It was just that there was this deadline, and we all have to stay late at work. And you saw some lipstick on my collar. That was just because when we were done, we all hugged and we were all celebrating, and I just happened to, a woman's lipstick just got on my collar.
Up on my collar.
Yeah. And then you have to keep telling the lie, especially if you're in an ongoing situation of like being in a situation where you have to keep up a deception for a long period of time. And you have to keep shoring up the story, right?
Yeah.
And that's draining. That's draining for the person who's trying to keep up the deception. It's very draining. And this is where I say it also leads to mental stress, incredible mental stress, which if it goes on will lead to physical stress, which can lead to chronic illness sometimes, or acute illnesses that can go on to being chronic illnesses, things like ulcers or, what have you. This is a very pernicious, it's a little bit like an emotional cancer. Mm-hmm. It's a cancer that eats away at us. And if we have a conscience, and sociopaths don't, so they can lie and be okay with it. They don't even know there's a problem, right? But for the majority of us, we also have a reaction of guilt and or shame when we're doing it. We may think in the moment, what a relief, I got away with it. Now I'm not going to be punished, blah, 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 blah. But again, and you feel badly about yourself, and that guilt and shame can be very corrosive.
Yeah. And
this is why sometimes it feels so good to people when they finally confess.
On their dying bed, or
on their deathbed.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So it always has consequences. A friend of mine the other day was telling me this story of how she was married to a man for, I don't know, 20 years, I think, and she had built him up. She had put tremendous amount of energy in helping him to become a very successful business person. And they led a very privileged life. She had, she lived in affluence, and she remained a housewife and mother. And so her life looked, on the surface, it looked perfect. And one day she went just for a lark, she went for a psychic reading. And this happened to be a psychic reader who had no problem telling the truth right up front. And what he said to her is, at this very moment, your husband is cheating on you. Yeah, imagine like a ton of bricks hitting her. And she states that she had no idea. I have trouble believing that. I really do. I can imagine that you might want to ignore certain contradictions or whatever, but she didn't know. And everybody around her knew. So when she told her friends, this is what the reading was, they all looked at her a little bit sheepishly, and she said, "Did you know?" And they said, "Yeah." we knew. For years we've known. So she went and she had taped the psychic reading. She went to her husband and she said, "You never guess what I found out." So she played him the psychic reading and his whole face went beet red.
Wow.
Yeah. And it turned out that in his very successful business, everybody was having sex with everybody else. Everybody was cheating on everybody else. And nobody wanted to say anything because they knew they'd likely get fired or they'd run into big trouble, right? So even people that liked her, who were working with her husband, would not say a word to her because they're, and so imagine the destruction of that, how their whole lives fell apart. They eventually divorced and she was just shattered. She was shattered. I don't know what he went through, but he had multiple women in his life, and kind of like a harem. And,
Nice.
and he moved on. But imagine the incredible disruption and destruction, not only of individuals but of whole social networks, right? Because everything fell apart. Their social network fell apart. My friend ended up, after the divorce, she ended up falling on hard times. She wasn't given a proper financial settlement, whatever. It went on and on. It was just horrible. And yet, when you are in the lying experience, the deception, it's all about thinking about the instant gratification. It's not about looking at the outcome. It's not about looking at the long-term consequences, which can be devastating. I always think of it too as a kind of arrested development. It's like when you made the comment about the child learning to lie early on. It's as if people can grow up, but they don't grow out of that childlike fear that keeps them always lying so that they get their way. And for example, a lot of people are either who do this are very immature, especially if they do it repeatedly. Mm-hmm. They're very immature, or they usually have a mental imbalance. You see it a lot with people with ADD, for example. They lie a lot to get out of trouble, mm-hmm. right? And what their issue is, their frontal lobes, their executive functioning is offline. Mm-hmm. Just like in a child, where a child can't think through consequences. They can't reflect on, oh, maybe this will hurt somebody. They can't, they don't have a strong moral code, mm-hmm. which is, what the frontal lobes are all about, the keeping of the moral code and making sure that your behavior is aligned with your moral code. And so, you can be with somebody who looks like they've got it all together. Maybe they're in middle age, they have a successful business and all that, blah, blah, blah. But they are operating on an ethical level of a child, mm-hmm. Because they've got the ADD and their frontal lobes just cannot, they may, if you catch them in a moment where they're calm and they're not afraid of anything, they may tell you, oh yeah, I value honesty. But the moment they get scared, their frontal lobes go completely offline and they're back into a very childlike state. That, their limbic system, which is the primitive brain, it's just like firing and going, oh, we got to survive. Better tell a lie,
Would these be the compulsive liars as well?
Well, you can think of it because it's constant. It's very repetitive, mm-hmm. very repetitive. And it leads to a lot of destruction because it does lead eventually to divorces, breakdowns of business partnerships, all sorts of, and sometimes, they can get into legal hassles as well, because they violate contracts. They don't pay their drug pusher, whatever, whatever. They get into fights, and so it's very, very damaging. It's unnecessary. The other thing is, unless you have a serious mental imbalance and you have a really hard time, it's not necessary. The other thing is, right? See, isn't it also interesting, Lynn, when we grow up, it's kind of like we are taught, especially women, that if we're asked a question, we have to answer. If it's an authority figure, sometimes if it's some, a peer, a peer. It's kind of like we are not taught that we can maintain our privacy. Yeah.
It's true.
We're not taught that we are entitled to not giving them whatever information they want. So a lot of women will lie because they don't even realize that they can just say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable answering that.
Or none of your business.
None of your business. Yes.
Yeah.
Women who lie, their mother-in-law wants them to come, for, some family gathering, and they can't stand their in-laws. And so they usually find some excuse why they can't go to whatever it is. And rather than just saying, I'm sorry, I have other plans. Yeah. Period. And that's not a lie, even if you want to just paint your toenails on a Sunday afternoon with,
that's
watching
what
your
you do.
favorite Netflix. This is a plan. This is important. This is your plan. It's not a lie, right? So you are entitled to say, no, I'm not comfortable answering that. You are entitled to just give a vague response, which doesn't give any information, like, I'm sorry, I have plans, I can't make it. Can also say, this is something that people have such difficulty with. You can also say, you know what, I'm going to have to think about it and get back to you.
Mm-hmm. I like that one.
Right? Yeah. But you forget in the moment, it's like in the moment somebody asks you a question and boom, and you're supposed to, spill the beans.
Yeah.
And I would say this is also a really good exercise in checking in with your gut. Like somebody asks you something and it sounds fine, and maybe you're a very helpful person and you think, I would love to help you out with your volunteer event and all that. It sounds lovely, blah blah blah. But you may notice that in your gut you're kind of getting tight, right? And you're not really sure why, but you're getting tight. But so you are that's the moment when you are perfectly entitled to say, you know what, sounds wonderful, I'm going to have to think about it and get back to you. And you get back to the person. You don't just leave them hanging. You don't, don't ghost them, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Lucille, what about people that have these elaborate lies, that make up like these crazy stories? I've known people like that. They have just endless stories about everything. And that none of it is true. Like, where does that come from?
Well, some of the extreme ones are like Munchausen's syndrome. People will go to emergency department, to doctor's offices, blah, blah, blah. They have this elaborate story about whatever their illness is, and nobody can ever find anything wrong. Right.
Yeah.
These people, nobody really knows exactly what causes this kind of compulsive lying. But it is definitely, in most cases, it's a bid for attention. They are it's an addiction. They need the attention. They need to be center stage.
Yeah.
They need to have all of everyone's focus on them constantly. And that gives them a real boost of adrenaline and dopamine. And it's just like a gambler's high, So it's a very destructive way to live, because eventually you wear people out.
And everybody knows you're lying. Everyone knows that every word then they won't even believe when you're telling the truth. And it's just it's interesting to listen to their stories, because it's entertaining, but it's just it's so out there, and they don't even try to lie and make it believable. No, it has to be so outrageous, your eyes are just bulging out of your head. You're thinking, what? This can't happen in the real life. And it did. I'm sure it didn't. But I've known people like this, and they're fascinating to listen to, but it's just...
it's entertaining. It's kind of like watching a movie.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
And if you just look at it as entertaining, okay, then you can spend 10, 20 minutes, listening to this stuff. Some of the worst narcissists are like that, or sociopaths.
Yeah.
Will do that as well.
Especially about themselves. Oh, I've been with hundreds of women, and
right. And last weekend I was at lunch at Mar-a-Lago with Trump, and I'm giving him advice on his position,
like that.
And it is sad though, because they burn all their bridges.
They do.
And they go from social network to social network to social network, trying to get that never-ending source of attention and admiration.
Yeah.
And they wear people out, they burn their bridges. And after a while, they age and they're just left with nothing, they're kind of like depressed. Then they get depressed and it's a sad sight. But, they're not the people who are amenable to going for therapy because they don't have any insight, right?
No, for sure. No. So let's talk about white lies for a moment. So when your best friend's asking you, does my butt look big in this dress? Or you're asking your husband, or, when there are circumstances when people actually really don't want to hear the truth.
Absolutely. And you know what?
When I ask my husband, does my bum look big in this? I'm waiting for a hell no. I don't want him to tell me.
Well, you know what? Then you have to take responsibility for that, Lynn. Yeah, I have said to people, I've said to people, okay, do you want the truth or do you want what you want to hear? What do you want?
But as women, we want to hear what we want to hear. Our bum is tiny. Okay, now it's no, our bum is huge because that's fashionable now. But but generally speaking, we don't want to hear the truth. And if I love this dress and I'm in love with it, I don't want my husband to say, well, I actually think it's ugly.
Well, your husband likely won't. I mean, husbands.
Yeah, my husband has Asperger's. He will just tell me what he thinks.
Right.
Zero filter.
But there was a reason you married somebody with Asperger's, right? You needed to hear the truth, the brutal truth all the time, right?
All the time.
But this is where you honestly, this is where I think, women, this is our childlike self coming out. And we have to take responsibility for that. And we have to acknowledge that we're insecure with some aspect of our bodies or something, right? And that's our work to do.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to get the flattery from your husband, because you know what? If you're insecure enough, no matter if he says, oh, you've got the most gorgeous bum in the world, that's only going to last for maybe 10 nanoseconds with you, right? And then you're going to go back to looking in the mirror going, oh, no.
That's huge. So white lies are never okay.
Well, they have consequences. Because if you keep telling the white lie, you're not progressing. You're not progressing.
Okay, you're at a friend's house and you're having dinner and she put her heart and soul into making the most delicious meatloaf for you and you hate it.
Right.
So what do you say?
What I would say is, I so appreciate all the effort you've put into making this. And you may find one or two things that you like about it. So it's, that how you give feedback, that sandwich technique of giving feedback.
Yeah.
So you give something positive.
Yeah.
And then you say, but for me, my own taste, it's a little too spicy. Mm-hmm. However,
I like the consistency of dog food So, okay. So you would give them a bit of a compliment and then kind of tell the truth.
Yes. Tell the truth. And it's not, because here's the thing. Maybe somebody could eat that meal and thinks this is fabulous meatloaf. Yeah. It's the best meatloaf I've ever had. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so at the same time, you don't want to make it sound like, well, my opinion is universal. Everybody's going to think this is a piece of shit. And I'm just telling you the truth about it, right?
Yeah.
You have to be humble. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one person in the entire universe who doesn't like your meatloaf. Okay, so I'm going to be humble about it. But you know what? The thing is, I'll be honest. When people have called me on my shit, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be because I have been knocked on the head a number of times and realized, you know what, you've got to grow up, lady. You got to grow up.
Yeah.
It hurts. Of course it hurts. But I feel like this person cared enough to tell me the truth. Like once a friend of mine came to me and I didn't even know I was doing this as a pattern. She said, you know what? I just want to talk to you about something. You may or may not be aware that you have this pattern of canceling out on our arrangements to get together.
Yeah.
And I was so hurt to hear that.
Yeah.
And I thought, really, is that true? And I had to kind of calculate back in my mind how many times and then I thought, you know what? She's right. She's absolutely right. And I was so astonished because, and then I realized a lot of people in my circle would never say anything like that. They would never be honest.
Yeah.
And I thought, and it was really
refreshing. You appreciated it.
Refreshing. I appreciated it. And then I became much more conscious about my behavior. And I did not just, cancel on a whim by any means. I was much more responsible. So
yeah, you are very much in tune with yourself and your faults and everything. But I think there are a lot of people that they kind of force, like you can't tell them the truth because they get offended. They will never speak to you again. Like I have friends like that would be so offended if I would ever tell them the truth about anything that they would never speak to you again. They would be hurt forever.
Sure.
The kind of people that you're walking on eggshells around all the time and you can't say anything. Oh my God, God forbid you even look at them the wrong way. So it's very difficult with people like that because you kind of hold back the truth or you lie.
Your choice though, right?
Yeah.
For me personally, I wouldn't be friends with people like that. I mean, I would be respectful to them if I saw them, and all of that. But I would not nurture friendship with people like that at all.
No, I agree.
And that is why we can be so manipulated by the powers that be.
Yeah.
Is because we're so caught in our own insecurities.
Yeah.
Right. We can't bear the truth. And we are so in fear of people disapproving, people being critical of us. When you're in that state, you have no backbone, right?
Exactly.
And people can manipulate you up, down, and sideways. And boy, do the powers that be know how to do that.
Yeah, kind of back to the politics that we started the show with. And that's exactly how they can manipulate us because, we just kind of go along with everything.
That's right. And we don't look for the truth either, right?
No, we don't look for the truth.
Lies. We accept the lies.
We will pick the politician that lies maybe 2% less than the other one because they're all lying. So you pick the one, I think this one lies a little bit less. And that's okay. Yeah. To run the country.
Or maybe they just have a blind spot for any lying. And it's just, I want to believe that this person is God. I want to believe that there is God. So I'm not going to even hear, it's not going to hit my radar.
Yeah.
If they lie or they contradict themselves, not going to hit my radar at all. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely. This happens so much. I see it a lot. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for today. That was a very interesting topic. I think we could go on about this for a long time. There's so much to unpack. Yeah. But basically, I mean, just to recap this episode, it's not okay. When we're lying to others, we are basically betraying ourselves.
Absolutely. And there are always consequences.
There are always consequences. Yeah.
Whether you see them in the moment or you don't, there are always consequences. And I would love if, people had any questions or comments once they viewed this or heard this episode. We would love to know your thoughts on the whole issue of lying.
Absolutely, guys. Please do let us know below what you think of this. Please tune into the next episodes. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone that you think might benefit from it. Maybe someone that likes to tell a little white lie now and then, right? Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into the ReWilded Human Podcast. We hope you're leaving with insights to reconnect with your natural, vibrant self. Remember, the information shared here is for educational and inspirational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personal health concerns. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We'll see you next time, ready to dive even deeper. Stay wild, stay true, and stay tuned.